evening, everyone. My name is Ruben Roberts. I'm the CEO of RER Consulting, and we are here tonight to talk about men's health. And inclusive of men's health is men's mental health. This is Men's Health Month, and we want to make sure that we can just share some ideas and some tips for the viewers that are listening in today about just how to take care of yourself from a mental health perspective, from a physical health perspective. I want you to know that they're definitely connected. I have two great guests with me tonight, two good friends of mine. We have Brother Charles Williams and Brother Eric Knowles. So without further ado, we're going to get started with allowing them to introduce themselves or share a couple of words with you, and then we're going to get into the program. All right, Charles, we'll start with you. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I am well. I'm well, too. Good to see you, my brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my name is Charles Williams, CEO of Generational Cure. We are a family systems, culturally sensitive mentoring organization. We provide family, group, and individual mentoring sessions for at-risk youth. And we've been doing so now since about 2011.
All right. I love the concept of being culturally sensitive. That means that you're looking at how you can work well with all cultures, with people from different backgrounds. So that's good. Good to hear. Thank you again for joining us. Brother Eric Knowles needs no introduction. You've probably seen him on TV doing some great things. We've done some work in the trenches in the past, working on diversity and inclusion. We've done a lot of work in those areas. And so, listen, without further ado, Eric, go ahead and share a little bit about yourself to our listening audience.
Well, Ruben, first of all, thank you for even considering me to be a part of this important conversation. I currently am the president of the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce. Been doing that for about 8 years now. Chamber was founded back in 1974. And as you said, back in 1974, the Chamber came together with the likes of T. Willard Fair, Ron Frazier, M. Athley Range, and many others, with David Fincher, who was the president at that time, because of the lack of inclusion and opportunity. And here we are back in 2022, still fighting for that. And as you said, we have been working together over the years addressing that. And as well, I'm a yoga instructor, certified yoga instructor, and I am also an actor, as you said, revitalizing, re-upping my acting career that I had for many years and just got back into the business about 5 years ago.
Well, it's good. Thank you so much for that. I mean, you're a man of many talents, many gifts, and you thought it not robbery to spend some time with us today. I think that's major. It's impressive. One of the things I want us to really talk about today, as it relates to mental health and wellness, is just what are some of the things I know both of you in leadership positions at your organizations deal with, the stresses of just, trying to make sure that things are running well in your organizations. You have your families that you have to contend with. And then, one thing I know about Black men in particular, but men, is that we suffer in silence. And a lot of times we don't really release whatever those pressures are that we have in an appropriate way. And it can cause some physiological damage. It can cause some mental issues. And I just wanted to know, how do you guys deal with that? I'll start with you, Eric, and then we'll go to Charles. Talk about what do you do to address, stress, anxiety, depression, because we all deal with it, right?
Absolutely. Ruben, obviously the last couple of years have been very stressful, dealing with COVID, et cetera. And, you and I have been working on that whole scene between the NAACP and the Chamber, and we formed what's called the South Florida Black Prosperity Alliance. And, the rest, we know what the stresses the Black community has felt from the very beginning with slavery. And, the murder of George Floyd and the pandemic peeled back the onion and let the rest of the world know. But to your point, how do you deal with it? I said at the beginning of the year, the rest of my life is going to be the best of my life. And
All
what do
right.
I mean by that? As you said, I'm an actor. I do all these things. And I think one of the biggest things that we do is short sell ourselves. All of us from one point or another, when we matriculated through school, we probably in elementary school started playing an instrument, whether it was a drums or horn or a guitar or something. And somewhere along the line, we stopped, or we may have even gone through college doing that. And we had a dream that we were going to be the greatest of whatever that may have been, a dancer, an artist, so on and so forth. And then we get into this thing called adulthood and raising kids and taking care of our families. And we push back those things that make us who we are. And that's the one thing that when I say living the best, my rest of my life is going to be the best. I'm going to be who I am. I started acting when I got out of college and modeling. And I did that for 20 years. But, the thing about it, I was never the starving artist. I always had a job. I worked for a nonprofit. But I was able to position myself. When I started that job, I basically made a mandate that when it was time for me to go on a casting, that I was going to go on that casting, because that's what I was doing. You can't predict or tell me that, or put me in a box and tell me I can't do this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken that job. So when it was time for a casting, I went on that casting. And obviously, I would let them know. And then when it was time, when I got booked, it wasn't, can I go do this commercial, or can I go do this modeling shoot? I let them know, hey, tomorrow I'm going to be doing this. And I went and did it. And so it's reliving our truth. And I would say that's one of the biggest things that we don't. We all have these dreams. We all have these things that we do. And, we go into corporate America and then we're silent about who we really are. We're only that person. I'm not just the person that runs the chamber. I'm a multifaceted person. I mean, my gardening, I love gardening, and I let the world know. A lot of people, like some of my family, say, why you put everything on Facebook? Well, I've always been an open book.
Right.
And I just, it's, and I get people who say, thank you, because it motivates them to do something.
So let me jump in right here, Eric. I want to highlight some of the things that you just said, because you're giving them a lot of information, but some of it needs to be really digested. So what I'm hearing you say is that what's important is that, we don't lose ourselves in life. And I know that, when we become adults and the responsibilities become more intense, sometimes the things that we're passionate about, we stop doing because life is happening. And so we have to make sure that we take care of those responsibilities. You have little people looking up to you, that need, that have needs, or you have a significant other that's looking towards you and she has needs, or he has needs, whatever your case is. But the bottom line is this: you're saying that you have to make sure you have to be true to yourself, make sure that you, in terms of your own health and wellness, do things that's going to really promote some sort of satisfaction in you. And these things that you are talking about are very constructive things. So the whole gardening and being at one with nature, or just, doing the things that you enjoy doing in terms of, the acting and that sort of thing. So that's very important. So I'm glad that you shared that with us. I want to go to you now, Charles, because I know that one of the other things I didn't hear you mention, but I know you're a man of faith as well. And, so I want you to talk about that, answer that question of, how do you address, some of the stresses? I know you got a lot going on, and sometimes I want to say this before you respond. Sometimes people look at the exterior and they see this strength, right? But they don't know what's underneath all of that. They don't know, as a man, what's happening on the inside. So Talk to us about how you address these things.
Well, I thank you. Number one, Mr. Knowles, for everything that you shared, being an open book. You spoke about transparency. I think that's awesome to live by that and to be an example of it. So that is actually inspiring and very encouraging, because I believe that as much exposure as we have in social media today to one another, a lot of things are withheld from being our true self. So that's actually very telling. And thank you for sharing some of those things about yourself, being an actor. I'm an actor as well. Have been doing so for quite some time. So,
What kind of
in
acting have you
regards,
been doing?
say it again.
What kind of acting have you been doing?
Both film and stage.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, both film and stage. There's a film available now on the Tubi app. It's called Lost. You can find
Okay.
that. I narrate and star in it.
All right, cool.
So yeah,
That's something I didn't know about.
yeah. So and being able to deal with some of the stresses of the world. As you mentioned, I'm a man of faith. I'm a minister. So pray, worship, those things, just getting in a place of silence sometime or getting into a place where I can just pray. Those things help me to deal with stress. You spoke about my age demographic. We have an overconsumption of social media. So at times we're taking on other people's stress through our eyes and consuming ourselves with the worries of the world. Whereas, I'm old enough to remember a time where you only knew what went on in the local news. So now I know what's going on around the world, and that at times can become very negative because of algorithms. You now are given these things on a steady basis. You're given a steady diet of negativity in certain things. So the internet then, of course, feeds that to you in your timeline. So we have to learn to detach from those things. A term that's become very popular now is called self-care. And our self-care, we have to learn to just be able to focus on things that are the most important to ourselves. There's a term that says to be I believe a master of none. Excuse me, a jack of all trades is a master of none. Because sometimes we just hear the part where it says jack of all trades, but the ending part of that is to be a master of none. So we tend to become an octopus with our tentacles everywhere and try to get into so many different things, and we stretch ourselves thin. I had to learn balance. Being a minister, being a mentor, CEO, a father, working a full-time job as an aircraft mechanic, and then having aspirations, writing books, things of that nature. So, even in having all of the talents and gifts, you have to learn to just relax sometimes. Being a husband, your spouse can be the person that you can go to and vent, and vice versa. And you too can understand the stresses that you're both dealing with and learn how to better gauge those things and help one another, become a therapeutic safe space for one another. Not everyone has that, but what I'll say is I've benefited tremendously by having someone that I can go to and talk to, and we can deal with our stress together.
Awesome. I really appreciate you giving that feedback. I I'm struggling right now with really, you know, thinking about how we can give guidance or give encouragement to
Mm-hmm.
someone who may be listening. And for those of you who are on, I want to encourage you, first of all, that this is Ruben Roberts with the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program, RER consulting program. We are the CEO of, I am the CEO of RER. And we want to share our topic of discussion today is mental health and wellness. This is Men's Mental Health Month. And so this is why we're touching on these issues concerning men. This is also Wednesday Talk. We will be doing this every Wednesday. And so we want to make sure that you tune in. If you have a family member who is out there that has a difficult time with getting out of bed, a difficult time with just dealing with some of the challenges of life, I encourage you to bring them to the Facebook Live and have them listen. Hopefully, they'll hear a word of encouragement or they'll hear a word of advice that may be helpful to them. These two gentlemen with me today, Charles Williams and Eric Knowles, have been sharing some great information about what they've done and how they handle stressors and whatever may come about in terms of anxiety and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
In our community, for the longest, in the Black community, and this is a program that's not just geared towards Black folks. This is a program that is culturally sensitive. So we will have folks from all walks of life, from all backgrounds on this show. One of the things I know in Black and Brown communities specifically, that mental health issues or diagnosis are oftentimes viewed as weakness, which is really, it's amazing to me that that's the case, because I have some of my Anglo friends who, they really brag about it. Well, I spoke with my therapist the other day and my therapist said, X, Y, and Z. And this is like a badge of honor, but for in our community, if you get labeled as someone that you guys know, when they say, oh, so-and-so is touched, he's special or whatever, the language we use, culturally speaking, it's always assigned to something that's negative. But I want to be here. I want to be the person to share with you all tonight that every single person that's listening, every single person in this world has something that can be diagnosed in the DSM-5 as a mental health diagnosis or an issue or concern. You don't believe me? Speak to a therapist or a professional. I am a family therapist by trade. Trust me, every single one of us, present, me included, has something that you can diagnose. So let's do away with this misnomer about mental health being a sign of weakness. One of the things I think that we have to look at is that you have severe mental health, when you have people with psychotic disorders and that sort of thing, and then you have people that have situational type of issues. I said it on the last episode, and I'll say it again. One of the greatest fears I had as a father and as a man was to be in a position where I couldn't take care of my family. Mm. That was one of the greatest fears for me. And some men would choose to leave because they can't face it, right? And some men will stay in there and try to deal with it. But you have to understand, when you're dealing with it, you're dealing with all of the pressures that come with it from the outside and the inside. Your family members are bringing pressure on you, and the outside community bringing pressure on you as well. And sometimes, as I said before, if you have family members that need to hear this discussion, I want to bring it out there. Sometimes you have folks that's making, real poor choices for the wrong reasons, for financial reasons. They're making wrong choices. They're putting themselves and their family in jeopardy just to try to make ends meet or try to make make life more easier for them, when in actuality it'll be harder. So I just want you to know that this spectrum of mental health and wellness, it goes so far. You can have issues like what we're dealing with now, gas prices being high. Housing is an issue for folks. Their rents or their mortgages are tripling. Folks are, food now, what it costs you. I remember when you could go to Burger King and eat for $5 or $6. Now it costs you $10, just for one person. So these are the stresses that we want to address. We want you guys to pay attention to, and we want to give you some feedback on. So one of the things I think, and I'm just going to give one, and I'm going to ask Charles and Eric to give one particular area that you can focus on to really help you as far as your mental health and wellness is concerned. And so one of the things I think is primary, and I think Eric and Charles had mentioned this before, is that you have to have an outlet where you can communicate with someone that you trust, a trusted source, if you will. As I mentioned earlier, men suffer in silence. And so a lot of times we hold a lot of things in, and then by the time it comes out, it's an explosion. And when that explosion happens, a lot of bad things happen. So if you're able to, really talk things through with a friend or associate or that sort of thing, I think that that's one tip towards really creating mental health and wellness for those who are out there listening. So, Charles, what do you think is a tip that you can share with our listening audience?
I believe the tip is to identify things that aren't conducive to your mental health and wellness. That's very important to find out what may be causing the issues, what may be causing the stress, what may be being detrimental to your daily goings. Sometimes we want to continue to self-diagnose and continue to work on certain things, believing that we can fix them. But if it's just as simple of removing certain stress, certain people, places, or things, then I would recommend that. Associations, whatever it may be. If it's a job, it's not worth your mental health. People are, I believe the rate of suicide is at an all-time high now because of, the pandemic that we're 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It seems like we're gradually leaving the threat of COVID, and then the numbers are rumored to be on the horizon again. So we don't necessarily know. But just as you alluded to, with gas prices and the cost of living, these things are definitely factors that we can't overcome, factors that we have to deal with. These are necessities, things that we have to have. But if there are additional things, additional factors that are, draining on your mental health and wellness, I would recommend removing yourself from those things, having realistic conversations with those whom you associate with. If they're draining, if they're not a benefit, then do what's necessary. Because at the end of the day, when your mental health and wellness is at jeopardy and is at risk, it can become detrimental to your life.
Yes, and as a professional that works with, that has done substance abuse counseling, so that about the correlation between folks who are duly diagnosed and how folks self-medicate and that sort of thing. So talk a little bit about that and about making sure that you make proper choices so that you don't use these substances as a crutch to deal with some of the issues that you're dealing with.
Self-medicating. I can recall a time where I was dealing with an intense amount of stress. A father who was separated from his child just because the courts weren't moving at the pace that I needed them to. So I dealt with a prolonged period of not seeing one of my children. And because of that, I took on alcoholism. And it was threatening to my mental health and wellness for quite some time, until those whom I would confide in began to take notice of my activities, began to take notice of my behavior, and they spoke against it. I realized what I was doing wrong before I went off the deep end. But having a post-career or should I say a prior career in drug treatment myself, working a decade in drug treatment, seeing those that were dual diagnosed, understanding that sometimes the self-medication was the reason that they ended up in those issues, trying to overcome stresses of their day-to-day lives. I would recommend paying attention to how it affected someone else. That's the best way to deter someone from getting involved into substance abuse. Look at how it affected other people. how it tore them away from their families, how it affected their well-being, affected them being able to provide for themselves financially, things of that nature. People are literally, losing their lives, losing their teeth, losing. There's such a great risk of engaging in these things, even with some of the things that are being laced in substances now, being fentanyl. It's detrimental to your life.
So yeah, it's real. It's real in terms of, but that is something that some folks feel is their option. So I'm glad that you mentioned, that there is a way out. There's a way
Mhm.
to get some help,
Mhm.
to seek a professional, and
Mhm.
it's okay. It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I think that we need to know as men, that it's okay to ask for help, and that we should ask for help if we need it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Eric, I want to segue to Eric. So Eric, what are your thoughts about this whole thing? One thing that you think we can do, and anything else you want to add to the discussion that we've had so far?
Well, Charles mentioned one thing, and that's removing those things that do not serve you.
Hmm.
And whether it's family, sister, brother, uncle, mama, daddy, if if they are being detrimental to your well-being or your mental self, you know, you got to remove them from your life. I
Okay,
mean, you
so
can still love them from a distance.
I'm going to be devil's advocate. Sometimes we are addicted to that thing or those people that you
Oh yeah,
just
yeah.
mentioned.
Hey,
So
Yeah.
and that's
how
a
do we
mental
deal with
issue.
that?
Some folks are addicted to just they want to argue, they want to fight, they get off on that. That's their thing.
Mhm.
And me, I'm the opposite. I'm gonna
Right,
go. Ain't nobody got time for that.
right.
That's me. And I have removed family members from my life because every time you were in a situation, you go into family reunions and there's always that one person that's going to
Mm.
just stir up everything, and so you have to do that. But I'll tell you, the one thing, it's people in general. We matriculate through high school, and then, like I said, you go into this thing of raising family, and you just stop taking care of yourself. And so the thing that you asked
Yeah.
me, what is my thing, is being physically fit. We get overweight, we're not eating properly, we just doing, everything, like you said, drinking excessively, doing, drugs, et cetera, taking drugs because we got diabetes or we got high blood pressure and because we're not eating properly. But some things are hereditary, but we're not physically taking care of ourselves. My point in saying that is, again, we come out of high school, we're sitting on the couch, we're watching TV, we're not doing anything physical for ourselves, and that's a stress. And
Yes.
I, I started teaching yoga 4 or 5 years ago. I was practicing yoga off and on for several years, and I wanted to get deeper into it. But it's not just the fact of yoga; it's the fact of doing something with your body. You know, I hear so many people my age, older, younger, talk about their back hurts or this hurts. What are they doing? They're going to a job, they're sitting down, they're coming home, they're sitting down. And so they're not doing anything to keep their body lubricated. So and that's, you got back pain, that's a mental stress that you can't do what you used to be able to do. You don't walk. You drive your car to the front of to the closest spot to the entrance of the mall. I I park the furthest back. First of all, I don't want nobody hitting my car, so I'm parking the furthest back, and I'm gonna walk. The other thing is, this year I got back in the gym and working out. As I'll be 67 this year, and
Wow.
they say you start to lose muscle mass and all these different things. Your ligaments start to go away, is in terms of being able to maneuver and move around. You have to continue to move your body, and that's one of the things that we don't do. And so with my point in saying that, then you start getting, oh, I can't do that no more, or I can't. And so now you're having that mental issue of what you can't do anymore. And a lot of people, again, talking about back pain. You don't have back pain from your back. Your back pain is basically coming from them hamstrings and those ligaments in your calf muscles that you're not using anymore. So
Right.
being physically fit, and you don't have to, like, I go to the gym and I see these guys, lifting 300-400 pounds. Like I said, why are you lifting 300-400 pounds? You're not looking to be Mr. Universe. You're not competing with anything.
Right.
50 pounds, 100 pounds, 150, 200 pounds. It's not about, killing yourself. It's about staying physical.
So again, I think that you guys raised a couple of valid points. And overall, what I heard from both of you is about awareness. So Eric, what I'm hearing you say is that awareness about, just your physical health and how that ties into your mental health.
Absolutely.
So if you're not physically fit, then it really draws on you. It may make you feel a little bit down and out because maybe you can't do what you used to do, or you feel that you can't do what you used to do. And so that may play on how you see yourself, and you may turn to some other things. This is where Charles was talking about how whenever there's stresses that come up, that we, sometimes we turn to those things that are not healthy for us, like alcohol, substances, or just being in very toxic type of situations or relationships. So those
But
things
at the same time, Ruben, at the same time, to your point, what you were saying about, not being able to do those things, obviously you can't do those things that you used to do,
Right.
And so it's having that understanding in your mind that, hey, I'm not there anymore. But some of us get, bent out of shape because you can't do it. And so you go into this whole mental state of frustration about not being the person that you were. Well, we're all
Right.
morphing, we're all changing as well. So you got
Right.
to understand that part.
So that, again, like I said, awareness. So that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Having that awareness, that mental acuity, that there are things that are different about you. There are things that are always going to be different as we grow, as we evolve, and that sort of thing. Things will change, but the key is, how do we handle those differences, right? And the
Absolutely.
key is, as we were mentioning earlier, sometimes if you had someone to confide in, they will tell you, man, what are you stressing out about? That's a part of life, and they'll give you a whole new perspective. So having that person that you can communicate with is one of those things that you can do.
Let me
Having
give you
that
this.
awareness. Go ahead.
Let me give you this one. Something that you just said about what you aren't able to do, what you could do, but being able to talk to somebody. Playing golf with a buddy of mine. So we're out playing golf. He hit some bad balls. I mean, he's like livid, ready to just like, I'm not play. I mean, I can't even say the things. But my response to him was, you don't play good enough to get mad. So what do you understand what I'm saying? Something as simple as that. You know your limit. So why are you getting mad because you can't do what you think you can do? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it just really goes back to, you a friend that maybe shared something that was enlightening to him, to give him a different perspective on it. But
Right.
one of the things I want to say to you, before we go too far off, is that I really appreciate, and I didn't say it to you earlier, Charles, but I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your transparency too, Eric. And one of the things I want to say is that you don't really find this type. We're on live, right?
Right.
You don't really find this type of transparency just on one-on-one situation with us brothers. We talk about everything under the sun, right? But when we want to talk, when there's some real issues that we have to contend with, it's challenging to talk for us. And again, that communication is key. But I appreciate how transparent you both have been on this Zoom. And I want to encourage those who are watching, the men who are watching, or the women that are with those guys, or whatever the case is, to understand that that's important. That's an important part. Charles said it also earlier that, that his wife is a major support for him, and that he can confide in her. You can bounce things off of her. So one of the things I want to say to you too is making sure that in your relationships that we make sure that we have those relationships where we can be healthy. I'm with you, Eric, when you said toxicity, I don't deal with it. I avoid it like the plague. You know, if there's someone that's going to be very toxic, then I try to limit my interaction with them. There's some folks I have to interact with regardless.
Yeah, you have to. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you have to, but I try to limit my interaction with them. And really, I believe that, you know, the energy you put out is the energy you bring in. And I think that when you bring out that positive energy, that's something that will also be helpful to you. So you guys are giving some basic, I think, fundamentals. One of the other things I think Charles said, and I'll let you expound on whatever else that you want to speak to, you know, another topic that you think that may be helpful. But in terms of getting the type of support that you need for whatever issues or concerns that you have. Someone right now has a family member that's dealing with some issues and they're at their wits' end. They don't know how to address those issues that their family member is dealing with, or they may be dealing with it personally themselves. And what I've heard tonight and what I've experienced in my profession and what I've experienced in general is just, first of all, taking that look within and being aware of what's going on. Charles, you mentioned that when you were stressed and you were drinking it, that's one of the things that you had to do. You had to look within after, you know, some folks that spoke to people that cared about you, spoke to you. And then you did that, you looked within. So one of the things I want to encourage folks to do is that we have the answers ourselves, no matter how difficult things may be, no matter how challenging things may be. And sometimes when things appear to be challenging, then that's when we make, you know, poor choices. But Charles, talk to us about some other ideas about what we can do to, you know, make better choices as far or find answer to some of the challenges that we have in terms of our stress and depression and that sort of thing. I think Eric covered it about the physical part. Eric covered that, you know, you got to take care of your body. You got to get that movement going. You know, if you're feeling out of sorts or that sort of thing, but you're living a sedentary life, then that part of that sedentary life is what's causing whatever stress and depression or whatever that you're having to get moving. What do you say to this whole thing?
A lot of us have gifts and talents that we aren't utilizing. And as Mr. Knowles alluded to earlier, due to, and I believe Mr. Roberts, you spoke on it as well, due to the pressures of adulthood, we tend to compartmentalize those things that we're gifted and talented with. So as Mr. Knowles alluded to earlier, him being an actor before, he wasn't a struggling actor because he worked for a nonprofit organization. I myself, being someone who has the ability to write and write very well, I bottled that ability up for a long time. But what I've been able to do as of now is just to write, and become creative with some of the stories that I tell in my writing, allowing those things to be a stress reliever. When things become extremely overwhelming, I write out alternate endings to what my circumstance may be through the characters that I'm writing about, which may seem to be perceived different to someone else, but what it does is allows me an escape. Of course, as I mentioned before, my spirituality by praying, my faith, my Christianity, these things also help. We don't seek outlets. A problem that some of us have is that we vent to the wrong people. We vent on social media, my age demographic in particular. We vent on social media. I was just speaking to my wife about this. Some of us go to social media with our problems, when in fact there are those whom are on our friends list that don't necessarily care to see us overcome those circumstances. They're literally preying upon your issues and they want to continue to see you in that situation, or they don't care to see you become alleviated of that stress. So we need to find different outlets. My wife and I like to go have breakfast at the beach, go get breakfast and go sit by the water and just watch the ocean.
It doesn't cost you anything, right?
Simple, romantic, it's easy, creates memories, and allows you to just forget what's going on in the moment.
All right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I like that. So again, what I'm hearing a lot about is just really, looking for something positive to do. And what I'm hearing a lot from both of you is that, Eric talked about gardening, and I'm sure that, that helps you puts you in a Zen state. If you've ever been to Eric's house, he throws these elaborate parties or what have you. His garden is gorgeous. And again, he talked about the yoga thing and how that worked. For a 67-year-old man, you really look good for your age, man. I'm telling you, man. So I hope that I'm blessed to look like that when I am 67 years old.
Wait, you're not 67?
No, not quite. I'm just a few months shy of that, but I know you bringing up the rear, so
way behind, way behind.
Yeah, about a good 56, but you're all right. You'll be fine. But this is the other thing that I think is important. It's laughter.
Oh yeah, you gotta laugh, man. You gotta
laugh.
That's the worst thing. That's what I was saying about my friend. You can't you're not on tour. You ain't even the semi-pros playing golf. You're a hacker on the weekend. So
right.
You first of all, you don't take lessons.
Right.
You don't practice. You don't go to the driving range. You don't play enough to get better. And so what are you getting upset? So, we got to joke, we got to laugh. The one thing, Ruben, you say about my gardening, I mean, I've always loved nature. I was a Boy Scout, so on and so forth. And, my gardening is, I grow collard greens, I grow kale, peppers. So I'm growing stuff to eat, but then at the same time, I'm growing flowers that I bring in my house. And, that's another thing that we don't do that can be stressful. I used to argue with my sister about making her son and daughter wash the dishes or just not keeping a clean house. When you come home, everything is clean, everything is put away. You come into an environment that's inviting. Now you come home, you didn't wash the dishes. You come home, you didn't fold the clothes. You didn't wash the clothes. Now you're pissed off because I got to wash the dishes. I got to do this, or I got to. So, it's those little things that make a difference in your life as well.
Right. So it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. One of the things I talk about, and I'm glad you mentioned this, and we're going to wrap up soon, is that clutter.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in clutter, if your life is cluttered and disorganized, that is a sign of what's going on with you inside. You know what I mean? You may be stressed out, you may be anxious, and you don't understand that all of the clutter is telling you that something is going on. So I appreciate that you mentioned this. I appreciate you mentioning. I appreciate both of you mentioning all that you mentioned. I want to do, because we promised this in the beginning. So I'm going to give a couple of quick tips about what one can do to really tips for their mental health. One thing is it's okay to have many feelings. It's okay for a man to feel. I know that a lot of us have been raised that you can't show your emotions, or you can't have any feelings. You need to have this tough exterior, and I think that that's something that can really lead to prolonged feelings of anxiety or pressure because you're holding everything in. And it's okay to seek help when you need help. It's all right to to say, hey man, something is off, something's not right, and really get the help that you need. And thirdly, I want to say that folks need to recognize and realize that mental health problems are much more common than you might think. There's a thing that they call situational issues, like we talked about with the environment right now, where gas prices, food prices, housing prices are high. And so if you're still making wages that are, that haven't increased in 20, 30 years, but everything has raised, every year for the last 20 or 30 years, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to feel stressed out. You're going to be in a situation where you may feel anxiety or that sort of thing. And then finally, I'm going to say just laughter, finding some things to do that really brings you joy. These are things that you all have mentioned. So those are the tips that I want to give those who are listening tonight. Those are things that you can do. Communing with nature, that's been a constant theme. This is our third edition, and that has been a constant theme throughout. Charles, you talked about going to the beach with your wife, having breakfast on the beach. Eric, you talked about in your garden. I know you do yoga right by your pool, that sort of thing. So just being out and communing with nature, these are things that you can do that doesn't cost you anything. Removing that clutter, making sure that you have an outlet where you can talk to someone, and making sure that your outlet that you have is definitely something that is a pro-social outlet and not something that's going to lead you down deeper into that rabbit hole. I'm going to give you guys a minute or so to say some final words. And then I want you to tell us about any upcoming events that you may have and how people can reach you or find out about how they can attend those events. So we'll start with you, Eric, and then we'll end with Charles.
Yeah, I guess my final words again, as I say, to thine own self be true. Don't live for other people, live for yourself. I mean, obviously, there are things that we have to do for our families, our loved ones. We have to take care of certain people. So it's not saying ignoring people, but at the same time, it's about being true to yourself, who you are. Charles, I have, I would say, the pleasure of being a writer as well. I write a lot of poetry, and I get a philosophical a lot. And Ruben, you probably have read some of my stuff that I posted from time to time. It's not something that I can't consistently do. It's when I'm inspired, and it comes out. And so, finding those things that make you and just doing it. But the one thing I will say also, Charles and Ruben, I probably suffer from what they call it, the imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And I say that in this respect because, like you said, Charles, you've written, but you at one point you didn't really take that on the way that was inside you. You probably suppressed it, and now you're not doing that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's,
right.
I would say, if for me myself, when I was a Boy Scout, my Boy Scout leader said I was going to be the first Black astronaut. And so what I would say to myself, I probably beat myself up for not reaching that height that I feel that I could be. So that's my personal thing that I deal with, that I can be more than what I am now. I mean, I'm happy with who I am, but that's the thing that I deal with, the possibility of it. I could have been the first Black president, or I could have been, the first Black astronaut. So those are the things that I've mentally, not that it takes me out or keeps me from being who I am, but that's what I deal with. And so, again, in order to move beyond that, it's about being happy with who you are at the moment and doing those things that make you happy.
Excellent.
And in terms of what's coming up, the chamber, we have our Little Black Dress in Pearls, our Women's Business Council on June the 30th. Also, the mayor, July 30th, July 31st. It's the last Saturday in July. But on June 30th, we're working with the county. There's a housing summit that is taking place at the Marlins Stadium ballpark on June 30th. And our incoming chairwoman, Linda Harris, is leading a panel at 1:00. It's happening all day, but she's leading a panel about how are we able to save our own properties? How are we able to develop our own properties in our community? A lot of times we lose properties. We don't know what to do with our, grandma left a property, or somebody left property to us, but it's just sitting there, or then we lose it for whatever reason. So that's happening on June 30th.
That's great work, and I'm glad to hear about the work that the chamber is doing. Chamber is much needed in our community, and I'm glad that you shared about two events that's upcoming, and I hope that you all will take heed and attend. Eric, thank you so very much for being so very transparent about everything that you shared tonight. We really appreciate that.
Thank you,
Charles,
Ruben. Thank you for having me.
no problem. Charles, your final words, and also what you have coming up.
In closing, what I'll say is that we need, during the most impressionable times of our young people, they need someone to speak life into them. What I believe myself and Mr. Knowles has been speaking about has been the pressures of adulthood, the pressures of life. But even when he spoke about the imposter syndrome, getting to an age now where he begins to reflect and think on what he could have been. Oftentimes, and not saying that this is directly his circumstance, but young people sometimes don't have that leg up where someone can tell them that they are capable, or help them to weed through the pressures of their young lives, so that they can understand the difference between just temporary pressures and things that they'll wear on them for the rest of their lives. So these are things that we do within our organization, Generational Cure, where we speak life into young men and we help them to sort through the pressures that they deal with, help them to battle some of their anxieties, identify with who they are, and help them to also identify with what their strengths are, so that they can become the next black astronaut, or become the next black president, or whatever it is that they may want to become in life, whatever their aspirations are. So one thing that we have coming up is our annual Black and White Gala. This event is where we honor extraordinary youth. We honor youth in several categories. It's overall improvement, extraordinary community service, and extraordinary academic achievement. Now, this event is happening August 6th in Miami Gardens. It'll be hosted by State Senator Chevron Jones. The keynote speaker will be Dr. Steve Gallen. And we're sponsored by Councilman Robert Stevens and the Miami Dolphins for this event. And you can most definitely find everything on our Instagram, on our website, on our Facebook page, Generational Cure. And tickets are still on sale. It's a great event where we're going to benefit youth. Like we just had our HBCU tour. We're going to do bigger and better things and continue to pour back into the youth of our community. So thank you, Mr. Roberts, for the opportunity to speak about mental health as a Black man during Men's Mental Health Month. Mr. Knowles, it was an absolute pleasure to share this panel with you. I will myself be attending this event that you're having July 31st. Look forward to meeting you in person, sir, and having more of an engaging conversation. And this is definitely something that needs to happen and continue more. The conversations of men speaking about mental health, because our pressures are astronomical. And oftentimes we do get to a point where we overwhelm ourselves and explode. And then we're taken out of our character.
Yes.
And Ruben, if I may, Charles just reminded me of something when we were speaking about youth. And, we live in a time of microwave instant gratification. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have with our youth right now. And I'm going to give you this one, the mop the floor syndrome. Nobody wants to mop the floor. They want to be the manager. One of my nephews is like, "Oh, Eric, they want me to mop the floor." And, I'm going to be nice now. I ain't going to say what I said to him, but I was like, "We need to mop the floor." How are you going to manage or tell someone how to do something if you haven't gone through the process yourself?
Right.
And so that I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in terms of instant gratification for our children and our youth. And
Well,
obviously, it's a different time, so it's managing these processes.
right. So one of the things I want to say is Generational Cure is definitely addressing those issues. They have a great program, and we have other mentoring programs like DC mentoring program as well. But one of the things I want to say is that I want to, first of all, I didn't get a chance to say, but thank you, Charles, as well, for just sharing and being here and being very transparent. My heart is full right now because what I'm seeing is that there are three Black professional men who are on here talking about a very sensitive issue, such as mental health and wellness. This is something that I think uh, is rarely be viewed. People don't really see this type of discussion happening at the level that it's happening at. I think that we were able to be very transparent. Well, you all were very able to be very transparent and share some things. And I think that that's important. I think that sometimes we are viewed in one dimensionally. And as you said, Eric, and as you said too, you alluded to, Charles, we are multifaceted. We have so many so many sides of us, right? And so I'm hoping that those who watched heard something today that will be helpful. I'm hoping that you really got a chance to get to understand these two gentlemen that are here, or get a perspective of these two gentlemen that are here. And they shared with you some of the things that they do to deal with stresses, depression, anxiety, and that sort of thing. This is Ruben Roberts, the CEO of RER Consulting, and also the executive director of the COVID Mental Health and Wellness Program. This program is designed to make sure that you guys get a better understanding of how you're dealing with your stresses during COVID and where we are now. We want to welcome you to go to our website. It's in the crawl. Go to the website. Make sure you call the care coordination hotline if you need any help or need to find out anything about what kind of assistance you can get from a mental health perspective. That information has been on the call and has been going by all evening. So I hope that you do that. This is Wellness Wednesdays. This is going to be an ongoing process. Wait to see who we're going to have next week. We're going to have some very special guests next week. And we thank you all for joining us tonight. And again, gentlemen, I thank you so much for having this very powerful and transparent conversation with us about men's health and men's mental health overall. Thank you, and good night, everyone.
Thank you, brother.